care ministry.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Join the Midtown Phillips Neighborhood Association for community conversation about improving traffic safety in the neighborhood. It takes place virtually on Tuesday, October 25th at 6:30. The City of Minneapolis and the Midtown Greenway Coalition will talk about the Phillips Traffic Safety Project. The project's goal is to reduce speeding and improve traffic safety. These improvements will make the street more comfortable for people who walk, roll, or drive. Again, that's a virtual community conversation about the Phillips Traffic Safety Project on Tuesday, October 25th at 6:30. Find the Zoom link at midtownphillips.org.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy, but with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Metro State University empowers students to expand their knowledge and advance their careers through high-quality bachelor's and master's programs in high-demand fields. Looking to complete a four-year degree? Metro State has more than 60 undergraduate programs to choose from. Hoping to move into the next level of your career? Find out which of Metro State's 25-plus graduate programs is right for you. Visit metrostate.edu for upcoming info sessions and to apply. Spring registration is open now. Metro State University, where learning meets living.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Clearing skies tonight with a low of 39, then sunshine Tuesday with a high of 52. There's no better time than now to experience the new Maggie's Lounge at Crooner's Supper Club. Serving up light fare and cocktails, no concert ticket is required. Crooner's Supper Club, just north of 694 off Highway 65 in Fridley. CroonersMN.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous. Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. We discuss local and national Native news and events, and as you know, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues, and we've been talking about Native issues for over 6 years here on the AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and now we're all over Turtle Island on the Civic Media Network, and we really just want to give a big shout out to all our relatives out there that have been supporting us and really just supporting us. We really appreciate it today. You know, Mondays are usually Dr. Stately of Native American Community Clinic, and we also have another guest from White Earth Nation, Mike LaRoque, and he's going to be talking about a few things with trains, and again people, businesses and foreign companies impeding on Native sacred lands. So we'll be talking about that a little bit earlier. But before we get any further, let's listen to the news that you don't hear anywhere else from Ogama. Welcome, Ogama.
Bonjour, Anin, everybody. This is Ogamaganua. I'm a member of the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota, and I have some news for you here today on Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake. The first thing that I want to touch about is something that has hit Native social media really hard and is something that is taking place next month. I want to just touch base on this wonderful article written by Nancy Marie Spears from the imprint, and was reposted here on ICT online. And it talks about what's happening with the Indian Child Welfare Act, or ICWA, which is about to be heard in the Supreme Court next month. The reason that ICWA is being heard in the Supreme Court is because there are 3 white couples who sought to adopt Indigenous children, and they're having their legal cases heard in the U.S. Supreme Court. Each of the foster families, including one which was a couple from Minnesota, say that the Indian Child Welfare Act from 1978 discriminated against them because of their race. ICWA was set up in 1978 as law to ensure that tribes have a right to intervene when their citizens are involved in child welfare cases, and it requires local governments to make efforts to protect connections with Indigenous cultures and kins. This protects our children from being adopted out by adoption agencies and from being removed from their culture. The outcome of the case challenging ICWA, which is Brackeen versus Halland, has really, really far-reaching implications, not only for custody issues and family separation in Indian country, but potentially for the foundational rights of tribes in relation to the U.S. government. Basically, all 3 sets of plaintiffs in the Brackeen versus Halen case did not gain full custody of the Native children that they wanted to adopt, so they're taking it to the Supreme Court. There are Minnesota laws that exist that had that were in place to address the destructive government policies, and Native children have been historically forced to attend abusive boarding schools and systematically placed into adoption in non-Native homes. But there are a lot of Native children that are still within the system here in Minnesota. In Minnesota, Native children are 17 times more likely than white children to be removed from their families, and they have a harder time with reunification. So this is a really big deal, and the kind of the players in this include the Cliffords, the Clifford family from Minnesota, the Brackeens, who adopted a child who was Navajo and Cherokee child in 2018, and then were seeking to adopt the half-sister of the same child. The Librettis family, who adopted an Indigenous girl in 2018, and Sirocco Hernandez, who is the biological mother of the librettist child who was adopted. So this is like, I mean, you're going to have to go on to Indian Country Today and read this, but there currently are a total of 497 Indian tribes, 62 American Indian organizations, and 87 members of Congress, including 23 states and Washington, D.C., that have filed briefs in opposition of this. And they detail a huge need to maintain ICWA and the protection of the integrity of Indigenous families and communities. And defenders of ICWA also say that federal law is not based on race, but it's based on the rights of the tribes as sovereign nations who have a treaty relationship with the U.S. government, which is what ICWA was established to do. So I know a lot of us are holding our breath in this case. And, when it goes into the Supreme Court, there's really not the same type of actions that we can take as if it were going into legislation. But if you go to eventbrite.com, you can type in ICWA, ICWA, under attack, and there's a free event. It's a hybrid event, and it's offered by the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center. You can go there in person. It's October 27th from 6 to 8 p.m., or you can log online for the Zoom meeting. And if you go to Eventbrite to search ICWA under attack, you can reserve your free spot. And if there is anything that can be done, it will tell you in that meeting. There's also going to be information about the efforts here in Minnesota to strengthen the Minnesota State Indian Family Preservation Act, also known as MIFPA, MIFPA. So that's going to be available. If you're going to be attending in person, there's going to be a meal served at 5:30 p.m. So it's hosted by the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors Family Preservation Committee. And again, it's at the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center in South Minneapolis on Thursday, October 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. And it is a hybrid event, so you can reserve your free spot at eventbrite.com to join via Zoom. I wanted to touch base and give a shout out to Metro State University, who hosted Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, to their St. Paul campus over the weekend. I heard that was really exciting. A little bit bummed that I didn't get to catch in on that, but that's definitely something that happened in the Twin Cities over this weekend. And later on today, we're going to be having a guest talking about a really pivotal kind of merger that's happening with the railway system in Minnesota. So in Minnesota, there's the Canadian Pacific Railway has proposed a merger with the Kansas City Southern Railway. So by 2027, most Minnesotans, like most of the state, is going to see up to 23 trains per day carrying crude oil. And that would be a direct result of this $31 billion merger between Canadian Pacific Railway, or CP, and Kansas City Southern, KCS. These two companies announced their proposed merger last year, and the Surface Transportation Board, which is federal, is examining how it may impact our state's economy, safety, and communities. This has been a widely opposed merger by many community organizations, by the White Earth Nation, who has train tracks that go directly through it. But I want to highlight for our non-Indigenous relatives, or for our Metro relatives that are tuning in tonight from the Minneapolis metro area, that this map that I'm looking at says we could be seeing some pretty strong increases of these trains carrying that crude oil going through the Twin Cities and Minneapolis as well. So this is something that everybody kind of needs to get on board with and be aware of, and let people know that this is something that raises concerns with you for everything from emergency vehicle access to threats to wildlife and natural resources. Robert Pilot is going to be interviewing White Earth Nation Secretary Treasurer Mike LaRoque in just a few minutes about this issue. But those are the two big things that I wanted to hit on today on Native Roots Radio. So the other thing is, midterm elections here are coming up on November 8th. If you have not yet voted, you definitely need to get your ballots in if you're early voting, or make a plan to vote. You can make a plan to vote at makevotingatradition.org, which is a service of the Native American Community Development Institute. So again, miigwech to everybody for tuning in to Native Roots Radio, and back to you, Robert.
Hey, Pinagigi, Ogama. Hey, this portion was brought to you by the Native American Community Development Institute. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Unwanted sexting or photos, inappropriate jokes, even tickling or wrestling can feel like a violation. Catcalling, cornering, or groping, getting them drunk or high for sex, recording sexual acts without permission, hurting someone because of their sexual orientation, raping a family member, a child, a date, a friend, a stranger, purchasing a human being for sex. You make the choice every single time. Sexual violence is many things. Make a choice. Do not do it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
J&S Bean Factory is a Native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on site from the best coffee growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Minnesotans age 65 plus might qualify for Health Partners Minnesota Senior Health Options. The plan includes personal support, coverage for medical, prescription drugs, and dental, plus over 30 extra benefits. Eligibility information is available at healthpartners.com/oneplan. Health Partners is a health plan that contracts with both Medicare and the Minnesota Medical Assistance Medicaid program to provide benefits of both programs to enrollees. Enrollment in Health Partners depends on contract renewal.
You're listening to Native Roots Radio. This is Spirit from Reservation Dogs. Get up and listen.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot. Hey, this portion is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice. And speaking of climate justice, I don't know if Michael's on. I see the spinning wheel of heck. I didn't want to say heck, but let me just read a few things here. We got Michael LaRoque here from the White Earth Nation. He's the Secretary Treasurer. And, by 2027, some of the Minnesotans could see up to 23 trains per day carrying a dangerous crude oil, thanks to a $31 billion merger between, as Ogama said earlier in her news, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, CP, and Kansas City Southern, KCS. Those two companies announced their proposed merger last year, and now the Surface Transportation Board, STP, is examining how it may impact our state's economy safely and the communities. A White Earth Nation Business Council has opposed this merger, as well as numerous other Minnesota legislators. And let me just give you the list here. We have Representative McCollum, Representative Ilham Omar, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Tina Smith, Representative Paul Anderson, Minnesota Professional Firefighters, Move Minnesota Midtown Greenway Coalition, and Honor the Earth and the Sierra Club. Those are some heavy hitters that are looking out for us. And, according to the Surface Transportation Board, much of Minnesota can expect a 3 to 7 trains per day increase in railroad traffic while hauling dangerous crude oil, raising concerns about emergency vehicle access and threats to wildlife and natural resources. Does this all sound familiar to us here in Native country? I do believe so. According to the map published by STP, traffic increases are expected to affect the tribal territories in the northwest part of the state, through Metro and down along the Mississippi River on the Wisconsin border. Our Wisconsin relatives, are you hearing that? It's unbelievable. According to the current and former tribal leaders, the shipment of crude oil will run through ceded territory and would threaten their ability to harvest wild rice. Here we go again. The increase in rail traffic will also increase delays on the road. In one instance, a woman in labor had to be routed to a clinic in Detroit Lakes instead of a nearby clinic because of current rail traffic. Those situations will only become more common in this merger if this merger is approved. And I wonder, Michael, are you there by any chance? Michael, if you can, give us a call at 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I think it's really important that we talk to you about the issues that are happening up in the deep north. Again, out of sight, out of mind. I feel like if it isn't pipelines, things are going on up there that will affect us all downriver, also affect us in Indian country. Again, whatever happened to all these all these, kind of, all these companies owning stuff. That's why it's really important that we're on the Civic Media Network because, as you know, 90% of the airways and media is owned by 8 companies. And so it's really exciting that we're here. Native Roots Radio is on the Civic Media Network and also the mothership here, AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. And we're able to talk about these things and, being able to talk about what's going on in Indian country where a lot of our allies that listen into these stations all across Turtle Island, we're here to let you know what's happening to us. And, these things aren't new. It's something that's been going around against the Native American communities for over 500 years. And I'm glad that, we have a voice and we're all over Turtle Island talking about this with our allies listening. Our Native community knows only too well what happens to us when we are just being ourselves. So, and Ogama too talked about ICWA. Please reach out to people. And, Michael doesn't look like he's able to get on. But what I want to talk a little bit about too is how important voting is. We need to really, really, truly get out and vote and get our relatives out to vote. I don't know how many ways I can say this. We've been able to, as Native Americans, only been able to vote for less than 100 years. That blows people's minds. My Gaga, my great Gaga, these people weren't able to vote, and it's just crazy. I wonder, Dr. Stately, you're right there. Do you mind coming on right now? Dr. Stately, how you doing? Having
Good,
trouble.
how are you?
Having a little trouble with our guest up in the deep north there, Mike LaRoque of White Earth Nation, and we were talking about maybe you can chime in a little bit too. We're talking a little bit about this railroad merger that's happening up in the deep north, and it will add more 23 trains per day, more carrying dangerous crude oil, and again, an assault on Indian country. And I was just kind of talking about how we've been only able to vote for less than 100 years. I mean, it's just an assault that we're used to having. But it's great that we're on the Civic Media Network and on AM 950 that we can talk to our relatives and our white allies about what we've been dealing with and what we deal with pretty regular.
Yeah. I think that it's pretty evident. I think, especially over the last, I would say, easily the last decade, that we haven't had a lot of voice in state politics. As Indigenous people, or I guess probably even at the national level. But as it pertains to specifically what's going on in northern Minnesota, it's like there's not been a significant amount of political voice for Native people until fairly recently, right? So I think within the last 4 years, we've elected a significant number of legislators to the state legislature. We have an Indigenous lieutenant governor, so we're starting to, I think, build more political clout. I think, or demonstrating that Native people, when they show up and they vote, when we are able to sort of mobilize our communities and get everybody who's eligible to vote to show up to the polls and exercise their civic privilege and their duty to cast their vote, how critical that is in sort of state and local politics, nationally as well. But things have really shaped differently here in Minnesota over the last 4 years. This conversation is critical because, like, in 14 days from tomorrow, we'll be voting again, right? And there's some really tight races.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been reaching out to a lot of people, friends of ours and allies of ours, to be on the show because we only have 6 days left, and it is the major countdown. Hey, Michael is on the line right now. He called in. I wonder, Michael. Uh-oh. I hear an echo.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's calling from Mars.
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe Michael, we can get you on talk a little bit about this in the next segment, because we're rounding it up right now. But Dr. Stately, always good to see you. I tried to come see you Thursday, but to no avail, because you know how I am with
on right now. Oh, Robert.
Oh, you there, Michael?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Michael, can you hold on? We have to take a break here, and then we can talk a little bit about this proposed railroad merger, and maybe Dr. Stately has a few questions. So okay. I want to take a break here, and we'll be right back with Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we're going to talk about this railroad, and of course I'm going to put Dr. Stately to work and he'll help me do the interviewing. So I appreciate it, Dr. Stately. See what happens when you come on a little early. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we'll be right back after this short break. Please stay with us.
As we head towards colder weather, it's important to make sure you're up to date on vaccinations and protected from COVID-19. The Native American Community Clinic is now administering the updated Pfizer bivalent booster. The updated bivalent booster helps protect against the original COVID-19 strain and against newer Omicron variants. And it will help restore protection that has decreased since previous vaccinations. People age 5 and older are now recommended to get an updated bivalent booster dose at least 2 months after their last COVID-19 shot. That means the bivalent booster may be given after a person's primary series or after their last booster shot, regardless of what brand you received before. Even if you've already had COVID-19, you should get vaccinated. Right now, at the Native American Community Clinic, you can get COVID-19 vaccines, including updated boosters, at the same visit as other vaccines. However, if you've received a recent monkeypox vaccine, you may need to wait 4 weeks before you can get a COVID-19 vaccine, and you should discuss this with your provider. Schedule your vaccination appointment with the Native American Community Clinic by calling 612-872-8086.
Join the Midtown Phillips Neighborhood Association for community conversation about improving traffic safety in the neighborhood. It takes place virtually on Tuesday, October 25th at 6:30. The City of Minneapolis and the Midtown Greenway Coalition will talk about the Phillips Traffic Safety Project. The project's goal is to reduce speeding and improve traffic safety. These improvements will make the street more comfortable for people who walk, roll, or drive. Again, that's a virtual community conversation about the Phillips Traffic Safety Project on Tuesday, October 25th at 6:30. Find the Zoom link at midtownphillips.org.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
We are living in a critical time for Indian country. Climate chaos threatens our land, water, and communities. Voting is one way we can protect our planet for future generations. Voting creates a collective power in the fight for our future. Have one-on-one conversations with your friends and family to make sure that they're making informed voting choices. Voting is our voice. This November, NATKI is asking us to stand together and make voting a tradition. Go to makevotingatradition.org to learn more and to make your pledge to vote.
Smart radio for smart people. That's the Tom Hartman program. Listen to me, Tom Hartman, from 11 a.m. to 2 right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Next Chapter Booksellers has lots of new books in stock just in time for fall. And while we're sad to see summer go, the colder weather does make better reading weather, so stop by the store off Snelling and Grand in St. Paul. Browse the shelves, or if you're not sure what to get, ask a friendly bookseller. We're great at making recommendations no matter your taste. Next Chapter Booksellers also has a wide variety of puzzles, games, and even some early holiday shopping gift ideas. That's the independently owned Next Chapter Booksellers in St. Paul.
Hi, I'm Scott Shambot from Shambot Family Dentistry. We're the fear-free, shame-free dental office. If you're having a dental emergency, we'll try and get you in the same day you call because we don't like to see anyone in pain. And we'll help you get through every appointment in the most pain-free way possible. As my daughter Rachel says,
if you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shambot Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblotfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Clearing skies tonight with a low of 39, then sunshine Tuesday with a high of 52. There's no better time than now to experience the new Maggie's Lounge at Crooner's Supper Club. Serving up light fare and cocktails, no concert ticket is required. Crooner's Supper Club, just north of 694 off Highway 65 in Fridley. CroonersMN.com.
This is Winona LaDuke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm Awake.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot. Hey, this portion's brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis, honoring health and tradition. I'm here with Dr. Stately, and we also have Mike from White Earth Nation, and we're going to talk a little bit about this merger that's proposed, railroad merger. Welcome, Mike.
Ani Bonjour, can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great. Sound like you're on the radio. Ho! Hey, cool. So I talked a little bit about this when we were last segment, but it's interesting that White Earth Nation Business Council has opposed this merger, as well as numerous other Minnesota legislators and organizations, including, and then I read it off, Representative McCullen, Ilham Omar, Senator Klobuchar, Tina Smith, and on it goes. Tell us, again, it's attack on the Deep North and our sovereign nations up there. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Okay, Ani Bonjour. My name is Mike LaRoque. I'm the Secretary Treasurer for the White Earth Nation. Also, I was the former Public Safety Director for the White Earth Nation and the Chief of Police. And a few weeks back, I went down and I testified at the Service Transportation Board on this merger. Because White Earth Nation does oppose this merger. And for one of the reasons why we would, with the increased traffic that we're going to be having coming through our reservation. As you know, what the White Earth Nation is a nation over in the northwestern side of Minnesota, and this railway, the Canadian Pacific, right now runs north to south, south to north through our reservation. Our reservation runs like 36 by 36 miles, and it runs directly through about 5 of our villages, our cities and stuff like that. So one of the things that when we found out about this merger and the traffic going to be increasing by about 300%, they told us, basically we decided to do the things we can do to stop this merger. And one of them was testifying down at Washington, D.C. with the Service Transportation Board. When I did do that, I also met with Senator Tina Smith and Senator Amy Klobuchar on this issue. And also they did write a letter to the Canadian Pacific Railroad expressing that they should have reached out to us before they even thought about doing this merger and stuff like that, because it does impact our native lands as far as our waters, our rivers, our lands, our people, and stuff like that. So the other thing is there's a big safety concern with the increased traffic that they're having come through our nation. It runs through, like I said earlier, it runs through 3 or 4 small towns where we've had several derailments in these towns. 3 or 4 in the last 10 years in the city of Monoman. We had a very major one in the city of Callaway where it had to evacuate the whole whole village and stuff like that, or the city. And then with the increased traffic of them with transporting oil, whatever kind of oil they're coming through, Santar oil or crude oil, whatever's coming through, the increased traffic means increased derailments and, causing damage to our lands and our people and our waters. So that's kind of in a nutshell, and the other thing is I know you did talk a little bit about the safety aspect of them coming through with the 300% increase in traffic. That is a good story that I told before about blocking the train tracks. We have our emergency services on the west side of the tracks, and we have a large community on the east side of the tracks. And we did have a female that was pregnant and was in a car accident, and they couldn't get her over to the hospital because the train tracks are blocked and stuff like that. So with the increased traffic, it's going to be blocked even more. And they had to divert this female to the Detroit Lakes Hospital, and luckily everything came out fine with the whole thing. So, but still, that's increased risk that they take by blocking those pathways and stuff like that. So, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying we're here with Mike LaRoque, White Earth Nation Secretary Treasurer. Mike, and I don't know, jump into Dr. Stately. One of the things I was curious about, do these trains propose to slow down when they get when they become close to the reservations or any of the travel areas, or are they just speeding through? And it sounds like they're very, very long trains with a lot of cars on it that if you can't get around to get services, whether it's a hospital or any of that, Mike.
Yes, one of the things that were happening in the past is the train was actually stopped for whatever situation they had. The train was actually stopped and blocking traffic in our city of Monoman and stuff like that. So as far as them slowing down, yes, I believe they do have to. They blow their whistle and they can only go through these cities at a certain miles per hour, and I'm not sure what it is, if it's whether it's 15 or 20 miles an hour. So that's what I know about that. So,
Mike or Dr. Stately, you have anything?
No, I mean, I think one of the things I would say is that, generally speaking, I think for all of Minnesota, it's probably not a great idea. I know that I read up a little bit. I boned up on the merger while you were on radio station identification. It looks like Canadian Pacific Railroad is already running through Minnesota, but it's going to significantly increase the amount of traffic through this relationship that they're developing with I think it's Kansas something railroads, and a significant amount of the traffic is going to be carrying crude oil across our land, through our reservations and across our rivers, right? They did have and CP had a derailment in an accident where they did spill about 30,000 gallons of crude oil in a community near the Twin Cities, actually, I think, in 2020. And so I think one of the things that becomes a significant concern is the Mississippi River, the headwaters of the Mississippi River run through, through White Earth and the adjoining communities up there. That river is the main source of drinking water for many, many communities downstream, including the Twin Cities, and even further south. There's significant concern, I would imagine, that if there was a derailment over the river, that it would poison the river, and crude oil would leak into the river, causing a significant amount of health concerns and health and safety risks for all of the people downstream. And I think those are all really important things for us to consider. I think one of the things we don't often think about is the amount of other potential things that could happen when we have long trains that are carrying very heavy loads that are moving very rapidly and quickly through the countryside in either areas that adjoin reservations, that cross or run adjacent to our highways. Native people tend to have many more accidental injuries that include motor vehicle accidents, that sometimes include trains and those kinds of things when they're crossing, when there's sections where it crosses. I always think about when I go home for a visit, I know there's a railroad crossing outside of Bagley that always makes me a little bit nervous, because you never know if the lights are going to work, and and there's some trees that sort of kind of hide any approaching trains. But those are real world things that sort of are important for people to think about when the amount of railroad traffic is going to increase. And then of course you have all of the pollutants that come with like many more diesel run trains running through a community. And Native people already have some of the highest rates of asthma and other things that are related, other disorders that are related to environmental toxins in our communities. And those are real things.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Stately. Mike, what can we do? What can our listeners do? I always want like some action here. I know probably people are hearing this for the first time. What can they do? It sounds like we can support the people that are supporting this action that you propose, or tell us what we can do, Mike.
Well, what you can do is you can add public comments to the before the decision is made I think you go on and I'd have to talk to somebody about what the exact website is on it for you to go make a public comment against the merger, and then it would be put on public comment through in the Surface Transportation Board would take that into consideration and stuff like that, because I believe the merger is still up in the air about whether it's going to go through or not. And I think it's next year, or maybe next year sometime, when they finally make the decision to do that. But I would say, I would look up the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern merger and look it up, and then there'll be a link on there that says you can add a public comment to it. I believe that's the best thing we can probably do at this time. One of the things that us as a nation, White Earth as a nation, and me being the Secretary Treasurer of White Earth, I sit on the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe and Tribal Executive Committee under our Constitution. There's some stuff I'm going to be researching on that to be able to kind of stop it from on that end of it too, with the MCT and the TEC to do something like that and maybe get that out there. So, and I honestly believe that these railroads they're big business, and when we talk to a lot of either the congressmen or the senators and stuff like that, they seem to always tell us that they're big business, and hopefully they can't get away with doing what they want to do, and that's one of the things we're trying to stop.
Right on, Mike. Hey, we got to have you on the show again, and we can get deeper into this. I really appreciate you stopping in, Dr. Stately. There's a website that you that we can go to right now.
That was a piece, a public opinion piece, public opinion piece that was written by Amy Koch, who's a local lobbyist and lawyer, works with a lot of tribal people here in Minneapolis. But it's also like if you Google public opinion or public comment on CP Kansas Railroad merger, the link should pop up.
Right on. Hey, Mike, we're going to get you on again. You're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake. Up next, Dr. Stately. Stay with us. Metro State University empowers students to expand their knowledge and advance their careers through high-quality bachelor's and master's programs in high-demand fields. Looking to complete a 4-year degree? Metro State has more than 60 undergraduate programs to choose from. Hoping to move into the next level of your career? Find out which of Metro State's 25-plus graduate programs is right for you. Visit metrostate.edu for upcoming info sessions and to apply. Spring registration is open now. Metro State University, where learning meets living. We are living in a critical time for Indian country. Climate chaos threatens our land, water, and communities. Voting is one way we can protect our planet for future generations. Voting creates a collective power in the fight for our future. Have one-on-one conversations with your friends and family to make sure that they're making informed voting choices. Voting is our voice. This November, NATGI is asking us to stand together and make voting a tradition. Go to makevotingatradition.org to learn more and to make your pledge to vote.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
Bonjour, I am Oshawashko Gijig. I'm from Red Lake Nation, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. Hey, this portion's brought to you by Howling for Wolves. Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations. Okay.
As a sad.
Hey, welcome. Yeah, exactly. Hey, welcome to Native Roots Radio, and we're with Dr. Stately, CEO of Native American Community Clinic. Boy, I'm just getting and thank you for stepping in early and also helping me with that interview. So, what I would like to do, Dr. Stately, is just to ask you what you'd like to talk about in this last segment.
Well, I mean, I think that last issue is a really important one. We don't often think very often about how critical environmental degradation is within the context of health, right? How much impact it has on our physical health, our emotional, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, those kinds of things. It is, it's a very big issue for sure. Everybody, there isn't. I think this is always a challenge. There isn't anybody that really wants to have a railroad running through their backyard, right? We our country, our people, our society as Americans, we all suffer from serious disorder called "not in my backyard" kind of syndrome, where we really don't want anything really that's going to impact the community or the planet in any way, shape, or form running through our particular backyard. And I think one of the things that I always think about within that context is that's probably true of everybody, right? But I think one of the things that we can all pretty much be certain of is that the majority of people that suffer the deleterious outcomes in those kinds of conversations are always with disenfranchised communities and disempowered communities, the ones that don't have a tremendous amount of wealth, right? The ones that don't have a lot of political clout, the ones that aren't, the executive officers of, or the stockholders of large billion-dollar corporations that can swing, their might and to their benefit, and usually to the not so great benefit of disenfranchised communities like tribal communities. That's been a fight that's been going on for decades. One of the things I would hope that people would be willing to listen to is that that merger isn't particularly beneficial or helpful to anyone really living in Minnesota. The Mississippi runs through the entire state, right? And supports so much of its entire state infrastructure. All of the all the tributaries that are linked to the Mississippi River would be threatened, and other sources of groundwater. So I think those are like important things for everyone to think about, not just the indigenous people in the state, but also the entire populace. But these fights have been going on forever, right?
Yeah, water is life, and I'll tell you, I walk by the Mississippi every day, Dr. Stately, and the river is low, and we've been in the second year of our drought, so it's so precarious when it comes to water, and you read reports that California wants to divert water from the Mississippi, and how much is that going to cost with pipelines and all, it's just crazy stuff.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. Like, they already dried up the Colorado River. Now they want to dry up the Mississippi.
Which,
don't get me wrong. I lived in California for like 20 years. There's a lot I love about California, but they have a big, huge ocean right next to them. They can like start, desalinating water from there. I mean, that's what they should be investing in.
Yeah, exactly. So
or,
I mean,
or maybe not have huge lawns and lots of it. And not everybody needs to have a pool in their backyard. I grew up for like 40 years of my life without a pool. I did just fine.
Wow. Yeah. I agree. It's crazy. And I think just amplifying in these discussions, with people, about what's happening in Indian country, because what's going to happen in Indian country is going to happen. I think that's what you alluded to when it comes to, everybody needs to keep their eyes on the prize. I mean, just 2 years ago, they put water on the stock market. I mean, that's got a flag right there.
Yeah. You know what I always tell people, like, I've been in some of these conversations. In fact, I just had this conversation yesterday. I'm sure you remember, like a couple of months ago, or maybe it was about a little over a month ago, we had some people on who were talking about the Friends of Lake Hiawatha issue,
right?
And why it's important to sort of like preserve Lake Hiawatha and even rewild it, because it's such a precious asset to not just the tribal people or the native people that live in South Minneapolis, but the entire community. And whenever I have the chance, I tell people, like, if native people are speaking up and we're saying, like, this environmental issue needs to be addressed because it's going to harm native people in this way, and these things, we're usually sounding the alarms and the voice of reason on critical things that are going to impact not just us, but people all over the world, right? So native people are who are usually the ones stepping into these spaces and places talking about it. And whenever people ask me, like, well, why should we be concerned about that? I say, well, you know what? If Indigenous people are bringing an issue to the attention of, not just our community, but our state, our region, our nation, it's usually something that's going to impact the entire planet at some point in time, or the rest of at least the rest of the United States. You probably should pay attention. What benefits us is going to benefit most people. Everybody wins.
Bob Blake always talks about, we're the last, the front lines of saving our environment, and that includes water and everything. We are here for that reason, and that's part of us being native and being here for 10,000 years.
Right. And I think one of the things that I'm always trying to impress upon people is that, our health and our well-being, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, of course, as well. Our health is tied to the health of the planet, right? If we don't take good care of the earth, there will be nothing to take care of us, really, when we need it the most, right? When we start to pollute our water, pollute our air, pollute the land, we're going to see, all kinds of critical things happen that are going to threaten our own physical and emotional and mental well-being. We see that every day. When we start to sort of like pollute the things around us and not take care of the earth and the air, that has real world implications for us as human beings, right? And we ought to think about those things.
Yeah, I really do. And and that all goes, I think what I talked about a little bit earlier, and I think when you jumped in, Dr. Stately, we were talking about is felt like your future depends on it, and you have young ones, and
Yeah.
and we need to preserve for the next 7 generations. And when we talk about the next 7 generations, we are really talking about the next 7 generations, and that's
Yeah. And remembering that we are the embodiment of the seventh generation, right? We're here because 7 generations ago, someone was making decisions so that we would have a space and place to inhabit on this earth. And we have the responsibility to do the same thing.
exactly. Peony Gigi, thank you so much, and hey, thanks for co-hosting Native Roots Radio. You didn't know you were going to do that, but I appreciate you. Appreciate everything you do for the community, and let's do this again tomorrow. You're listening to Native Roots Radio. We need to resist, divest, join a group, run for office. We're still here. We are the 7th generation. Free Leonard Peltier now.
Hey, it's Patrick. Football season is building up, and so is the